Welcome to the Hindu Daily.
It is, it's really wonderful to be here today.
We have a fascinating lineup for this deep dive. We are going to be moving from the high-level psychology of global protests right down to the microscopic details of bureaucratic failure in rural India.
Yeah, it's a really diverse mix today.
It is. We have editorial analysis, ground reports, and some geopolitical tension to cap it all off.
Right, we're looking at how Generation Z is basically rewriting the rules of political engagement, the crisis of language in our schools, the unintended consequences of welfare schemes, and even the geopolitics of oil.
So let's just get right into it. Our first stop is the editorial section, and we're talking about Generation Z.
Always a hot topic.
Always. Every generation gets analyzed to death, obviously. But this editorial argues that Gen Z, so those born roughly between 1997 and 2012, is actually creating a new architecture of global dissent.
That's a strong phrase.
It sounds like a very grand claim, right?
Right.
What does that actually mean on the ground for you and me watching this unfold?
It is a grand claim, but I think the evidence really supports it. If you look at the protests in Bangladesh in 2024 or the movements in Nepal in 2025, you see a pattern.
A pattern that's new.
Fundamentally different from what we saw, say, 10 or 15 years ago. The editorial uses a very specific word to describe this. It calls it episodic.
Episodic. Okay, when I hear that, I think of a TV show where the plot wraps up in 30 minutes. How can a protest movement be episodic?
Think of the difference between a rising tide and a flash flood.
Okay.
Older movements, think of the labor movements of the 20th century, or even the anti-corruption movements in India a decade ago, they were like rising tides. They had organizations, they had dues-paying members, and most importantly, they had designated leaders.
Right, right. If you wanted to negotiate with the civil rights movement, you called Dr. King.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you wanted to negotiate with the independence movement, you called Gandhi.
But who do you call in Bangladesh in 2024?
Exactly. Who do you call in Nepal? Gen Z mobilizations are episodic because they congregate instantly on social media around a specific trigger.
Like a controversial bill or an event?
A bill, a murder, a corruption scandal. They swarm. They overwhelm the state security apparatus through just sheer speed and volume. And they can topple regimes, but then...
But then what?
They dissolve.
They dissolve. So they win the battle and then just pack up and go home.
In a sense, yeah. Because they are, as the source says, virtually heavy, but institutionally light. They often lack the structure to actually manage the transition of power.
Wow.
This is the paradox the editorial highlights. They are powerful enough to destroy a regime, but often way too disorganized to build the next one.
That seems incredibly risky. I mean, if you clear the throne but you don't have anyone ready to sit on it, aren't you just creating a massive power vacuum?
You are. And history tells us that vacuums are usually filled by the military or the old guard in new clothes.
Right.
But the Gen Z psyche, as described here, is fascinating. They believe, and this is a quote, "The personal is political, but the political is not personal."
I have to admit, I read that line 3 times in the brief, and I'm still not sure I fully get it. The political is not personal.
It means they don't internalize political ideology as their identity in the way their parents might have.
Oh, I see.
They are described as having this uncanny combination of radical individualism and social indifference.
So they care, but they don't want to be defined by it.
Yes. They are less prejudiced, certainly. They are less jaundiced by caste or religion than previous generations. But they also avoid deep face-to-face friction. They vastly prefer the friction-free environment of the virtual world.
So it's activism without the messy business of actually sitting in a room with people you deeply disagree with.
Precisely. And this connects to their anxiety. This generation is described as the most self-confident in post-independent India, yet also the absolute most anxious.
That makes sense with everything we hear about mental health right now.
Yes, they talk openly about mental despair, especially regarding employment. And here is where a really interesting economic angle comes in. They view the market as the great equalizer.
The market? You mean capitalism?
Yes. Think about it. In a traditional village structure, your caste determines your dignity, but in the market,
It's just about what you can buy.
if you have the latest iPhone, you have status. The iPhone doesn't care about your surname.
That is a really sharp insight. So consumerism isn't just about being shallow. For them, it's literally about escaping historical baggage.
Exactly. It's a secularizing force for them. It allows them to transcend the hierarchies that held their parents back. So you have a generation that is secular, consumerist, highly anxious, yet capable of bringing a government to its knees in a single weekend.
It's a highly volatile mix.
It really is.
And speaking of mix, let's look at the mix of languages in India. We are moving to the second editorial titled Bhasha Matters. This is about the future of multilingual education.
This is one of those topics that sounds very dry and academic until you actually look at the numbers.
Lay them on us.
The 2011 census lists over 1,300 mother tongues in India.
1,300.
1,300. But here is the statistic that really matters for this deep dive. 44% of children enter school speaking a language that is fundamentally different from the medium of instruction.
Wait, nearly half of all kids?
Nearly half. Imagine you are 6 years old, you walk into a classroom, you are ready to learn.
Right.
But the teacher is speaking a language you do not use at home. Suddenly, you aren't just trying to learn basic math, you are trying to decode the foreign language the math is being taught in.
It's a double cognitive burden.
Exactly. It creates a massive barrier to foundational literacy. The editorial discusses the UNESCO 2025 Bhasha Matters report, which pushes heavily for mother tongue-based multilingual education, or MTB-MLE.
MTB-MLE.
Okay. The logic is simple. Validate the child's language, and you validate the child.
Ideally, yes, that sounds beautiful. But practically, how do you create textbooks and train teachers in 1,300 languages? That sounds like a complete logistical nightmare.
A few years ago, I would have completely agreed with you. It would be impossible. But this is where technology is radically changing the game.
Okay, how so?
The report highlights initiatives like AI for Harat and Bhashini.
Oh, I've heard of these. This is using AI to do translation, right?
It's so much more than just translation. It's about generation.
What do you mean?
These AI models are actually documenting endangered languages and creating local language educational content automatically. It's not just about translating a sentence from English to Hindi, it's about building a contextual curriculum.
So the AI is doing the heavy lifting that the state bureaucracy just physically couldn't do.
Exactly. And we are already seeing tangible results. Odisha has a program covering 21 tribal languages across 17 districts.
Wow.
And Telangana is using digital infrastructure called Diksha to get these resources directly into classrooms. We are moving from a place where linguistic diversity was seen as a quote-unquote problem to be solved.
Right, something to standardize away.
To a place where, thanks to AI, it can actually be accommodated and celebrated.
That is a surprisingly hopeful note. Technology bridging the gap.
It is.
But, and I hate to do this, I want to pivot to our third story from the ground zero section, where technology seems to be doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
We are talking about the Ladki Bahin Yojana in Maharashtra.
This is a harsh reality check. We just talked about AI saving languages, but here we see the digital state failing the absolute most vulnerable people. The story introduces us to Radhika Kambal.
She's a 49-year-old widow. Her story really upset me.
It's heartbreaking.
She applied for this welfare scheme, the Mukhyamantri Marji Ladki Bahin Yojana, which is supposed to give her $1,500 a month. But she was rejected.
Yes.
And the reason she was rejected.
The reason is infuriating. She was asked to remove her Mangal Sutra for a photo to prove she was a widow and actually needed the money.
That is incredibly demeaning.
It is.
It's policing her appearance to verify her poverty.
It's arbitrary cruelty by local officials. But the bigger issue this report highlights is the structural tech barrier. We often talk casually about glitches in these systems. Oh, there was a server glitch today.
Right, we just refreshed the page.
But for a woman in rural Maharashtra living on the edge, a glitch is a life-destroying event.
I want to drill down into this glitch concept because it sounds so innocent. But what does it actually look like on the ground for these applicants?
It's a nightmare of acronyms. Take EKYC, Electronic Know Your Customer. To get this 1,500, you need to link your Aadhaar to your bank account.
Which usually requires a fingerprint scan.
Standard procedure.
Standard for us sitting in an office.
Exactly. But think about the women applying for this scheme. Their family income is under 2.5 lakh. They are manual laborers. They work with bricks, cement, harsh detergents.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The report points out that many of them have physically worn out fingerprints.
Wait, their fingerprints are literally erased?
Worn down to the point where the biometric scanner just can't read them. So you have Radhika standing there, physically present, undeniable eligible, but the machine says no match found.
The digital truth overrides the physical truth.
That is exactly it. That is dystopian.
And it gets worse, doesn't it?
It does. If the fingerprint fails, the backup is usually an OTP, a one-time password sent to a mobile phone.
Right.
But in many of these households, who actually owns the smartphone? The husband. Or the brother. Or maybe they do have a phone, but the SIM card expired 6 months ago because they couldn't afford the minimum recharge.
So to get the money you need to buy a phone recharge, you need a phone recharge.
That is the modern poverty trap in a nutshell. And the scale of this is just massive. This scheme costs the state roughly 46,000 crore annually.
That's a huge portion of the budget.
That has 2.4 crore women enrolled. But millions are facing this exact scrutiny and getting locked out.
Now, we should mention, the opposition is calling the whole scheme a fraud, right? They're saying men are somehow getting the money.
Yes, there are widespread allegations of fraud from the opposition and serious concerns from economists about the state essentially going bankrupt over this. But as observers, we have to balance that high-level debate against the ground impact.
Right, the human element.
For the women who do get the money, that 1,100 is vital. It's not luxury money, it's medicine, it's school fees. It gives them a tiny slice of independence in a patriarchal structure.
But the fear that it will stop abruptly because of a sudden glitch or a change in government is constant.
It's a lifeline, but a very, very fragile one.
Okay, shifting from the fragility of welfare to a very different kind of conflict in the public space. Our fourth story is a spotlight piece on Kerala's stray dog crisis.
Yes.
And this isn't just a minor nuisance about dogs barking at night. This is a full-blown legal and ecological mess.
It is a classic case of a policy that sounds entirely logical on paper, just completely colliding with reality. In November 2025, the Supreme Court directed that stray dogs be removed from public spaces. We're talking schools, hospitals, bus stands, and relocated to shelters.
Relocated. It's such a sanitized word. It implies there's a nice green farm somewhere for all of them to go run around on.
Exactly. But where do they actually go? The report takes us to Kurumkulam, to a specific place called the Naughty's Pet Sanctuary, which is run by Sangeeta Iyer.
And from the sounds of the article, it's not a happy place for anyone involved.
It's a conflict zone. You have local residents protesting outside day and night. They are dealing with the constant noise of 200 dogs.
200 dogs in one place.
The smell, the sanitation issues. Sangeeta is trying her absolute best with incredibly limited resources. She actually took in 50 dogs directly from the corporation because literally no one else would.
But the community is furious.
They are. It's the ultimate NMBY problem. Not in my backyard. Everyone universally wants the strays off the street, but nobody wants the shelter built next door to their house.
There's a deeper biological problem here too, right? Because the public health statistics are alarming.
Very. Dog bites in Kerala rose to 3.69 lakh in 2025.
That's almost 1,000 bites a day.
And rabies deaths are up. The public is terrified, and rightfully so. But experts like Pradeep Payer, who is interviewed in the article, argue that this mass relocation strategy is scientifically flawed from the ground up.
Why? I mean, just logically, if the dogs are gone from the street, the bites stop.
Locally, maybe for a few weeks, but nature hates a vacuum.
Okay.
If you remove 100 dogs from a city that has 10,000 strays, other dogs just immediately move into that newly opened territory. It doesn't actually reduce the overall population. And worse, there are severe ecological consequences to just removing them.
Ecological consequences from street dogs.
Yes. Street dogs are scavengers. They actually play a significant role in the urban food chain. Specifically, they keep the rodent population in check.
Oh, wow.
Experts are warning that if you mass remove dogs from these urban environments, you might see an absolute explosion in the rat population.
And the rats bring a whole new set of problems.
They bring diseases like leptospirosis.
So you essentially trade the risk of rabies for the risk of rat fever.
Potentially, yes. That's why the experts insist on animal birth control, or ABC basically, mass sterilization.
Right.
It's the only scientifically proven way to stabilize the population without disrupting the ecological balance. But
let me guess, it's slow.
It's slow, it's unglamorous, and it requires sustained funding and veterinary infrastructure that just isn't there. So instead, we're stuck in this endless cycle of public panic and ineffective knee-jerk reactions.
It seems like every quick solution just brings a new set of long-term problems.
Unfortunately, yes.
Let's try to find some optimism. We are going to travel to Limbuguda. This is a remote tribal hamlet in Telangana. This is our fifth story, titled Lighthouse in Limbuguda.
This is a really fascinating counter-narrative to the usual tech fails the poor story we just discussed.
Limbuguda is tiny. It belongs to the Kolam tribe.
Right.
It has no regular bus service. The road connectivity is extremely poor. But inside this hamlet, there's a state-of-the-art AI-powered multi-purpose center.
It's being called a lighthouse.
Yes. It was set up under the PM Jane Man scheme, and it's equipped with some serious tech. Assisted language learning tools, assisted mathematics learning. They're even using Khan Academy resources tailored for the students.
I really love the detail in this piece about the landowner. Othram Jathu.
known locally as Devara.
Yes, that is the heart of the story for me. He's a farmer. He donated his own ancestral land for the center because he genuinely believes education is the only path out for his community.
That's incredible.
It shows that this isn't just a top-down government project where officials just drop a building in a village. There is deep, genuine community buy-in.
But we have to point out the irony here. It's pretty thick.
Oh, absolutely.
You have kids learning advanced physics and math via artificial intelligence, but they literally can't catch a bus to the Mandal headquarters.
That is the high-tech, low-infra paradox of modern India perfectly encapsulated.
Exactly.
They need high-speed internet for the AI to even function, but the physical road outside the center is broken dirt. It highlights a very strange developmental priority.
We can beam the internet from the sky, but we can't seem to pave the road on the ground.
Exactly, and the locals seem to deeply understand this tension. They have a very nuanced view of what this tech means for them. They want the education, they want the math and the science so their kids can compete.
Naturally.
But they also want these centers to be true lighthouses for their own culture. They want to use the tech to preserve tribal medicinal knowledge and their specific language.
So it's not just about blending in.
Right. They don't just want to be assimilated into the modern urban world. They want to be empowered on their own terms.
It's about agency. Giving them the tools to decide their own future.
Precisely.
Now, speaking of agency, or rather the complete and total lack of it, we really need to talk about the Bonded Labor System Abolition Act. This is our 6th story.
This is a very grim anniversary to observe.
The act turned 50 in February 2026, half a century since bondage was officially outlawed. And yet, the headline of the spotlight is the unbroken chain.
The story of Panchanan Muduli really illustrates why that chain is unbroken despite 50 years of law.
Walk us through his story.
Panchanan migrated to fund his children's education, a very common story.
Right.
But he ended up trapped in a poultry farm. He was living inside with the chicks, working 15 hours a day under essentially guard. He was entirely stripped of his freedom.
But he was rescued.
He was eventually rescued by officials, yes.
And that should be the happy ending of the article. The system worked.
But it's not the ending, and this is the critical failure point the reporters uncovered. Rescue is not rehabilitation.
Explain that.
The law mandates that survivors of bonded labor receive an immediate relief fund up to $3 lakh is the legal entitlement for their rehabilitation so they can restart their lives.
Okay.
But in Panchanan's case, like so many others, bureaucratic delays meant the money just didn't come.
So he's back home, technically free, but starving.
Exactly. He had prior debts to pay. He had a family to feed. So within just 5 months of being quote-unquote rescued, he had to migrate all over again.
That is devastating.
The system essentially rescued him from one trap only to leave him standing right over another pit.
The article also touches on something even more insidious than the debt bondage, doesn't it? Caste-based servitude.
Yes. This is the invisible bondage. It doesn't look like a locked gate at a poultry farm.
What does it look like?
In Odisha, for example, the piece details how communities like barbers and washermen are often forced to perform hereditary services for dominant castes during festivals or rituals.
Forced how? It's not a legal contract.
No, it's a social compulsion, and if they refuse,
What happens?
social boycott. They are instantly cut off from the village resources. They can't access the communal water. They can't buy from the local shop. They are starved out of defiance.
And where's the local government in all this?
Often in denial. The administration frequently denies this even exists. Officials will inexplicably revoke release certificates for rescued laborers or simply claim on record that caste-based bondage isn't a real thing anymore.
Wow.
It's pure administrative apathy erasing the lived reality of these people.
So 50 years later, the law exists beautifully on paper, but the actual practice of human bondage thrives in the shadows.
Precisely. It's a failure of enforcement, not legislation.
We have covered a massive amount of internal issues today. Societal shifts, bureaucratic hurdles, developmental paradoxes. For our final segment, we need to look outward.
To the Strait of Hormuz.
The global economy's narrowest lifeline. This is our foreign section article. What exactly is happening there right now?
So as of February 2026, the geopolitical temperature in that region has spiked dramatically. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has launched intense military drills right in the strait.
Okay, for those who don't have a map of the Middle East memorized in their head, why does this specific stretch of water matter so much to the rest of the world?
Imagine a massive funnel. The Strait of Hormuz is the tiny neck of that funnel. It connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean.
Okay.
It's only 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, but the actual shipping lanes, the deep water paths that these massive supertankers can actually fit in, are just 3 kilometers wide in each direction.
3 kilometers, that is incredibly tight for global shipping.
It's a massive bottleneck, and through that tiny 3-kilometer gap passes roughly 20% of the entire world's petroleum consumption.
1/5 of the world's oil through a 3-kilometer lane.
Yes.
And for India specifically, what's our exposure here?
The stakes for India are literally existential. India imports about 40% of its total oil via this specific route.
40%.
And it's not just us. 82% of all the oil that goes through Hormuz ends up in Asia.
Oh,
So if that strait is blocked or even credibly threatened with closure, it's not really a Western problem primarily. It is an Asian crisis.
so the old saying goes, if Iran sneezes in the Strait of Hormuz, India catches a cold.
India catches double-digit inflation. It's immediate.
Just from drills, they haven't even blocked it.
Even the threat of closure, like we saw historically during the tanker wars of the 1980s, instantly drives up insurance premiums for these shipping companies.
Because the risk of a ship getting hit skyrockets.
Exactly. And that massive insurance cost gets passed directly down the supply chain right to the consumer at the local petrol pump in Mumbai or Delhi.
And are there alternatives? I mean, can't we just bypass the strait and use pipelines across land?
There are some pipelines, yes, but they are nowhere near sufficient to handle the sheer volume of crude that moves by sea.
They're a drop in the bucket.
Exactly. We are geographically and structurally dependent on this single choke point. So these military drills aren't just political posturing for the cameras, they are a direct economic signal.
A reminder of who holds the keys.
A stark reminder of how fragile our entire energy security really is.
Well, on that note of fragility, it really makes you think about how much of our daily lives is dictated by systems we can't see.
That's a great point.
Whether it's an invisible algorithm denying a widow her pension, or a social boycott enforcing an ancient hierarchy, or a military drill thousands of miles away dictating the price of our groceries, the invisible architecture of our world is incredibly powerful.
It really highlights how connected everything is. A policy decision in a state capital affects a family in a village. A geopolitical move in the Middle East ripples right into our homes.
Absolutely. It is all intertwined, and that's why we do these deep dives. Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.